There was a certain feeling to Britain in the 1970s, a strange mixture of decline and confidence, of crumbling factories and perfectly tailored suits. The country was struggling through strikes, power cuts, and economic uncertainty, yet somehow British luxury cars still carried themselves with quiet dignity. These weren't machines obsessed with touchscreen menus or artificial engine noises. They had presence. Long bonnets stretching into the distance, walnut dashboards polished like old furniture, leather that smelled richer with every passing year, and perhaps most importantly, they had character. Sometimes brilliant, sometimes deeply flawed, but never soulless. Because in 1970s Britain, luxury cars weren't designed by focus groups or accountants. They were shaped by tradition, pride, and a slightly stubborn belief that elegance still mattered, and nowhere was that spirit clearer than in these 10 remarkable British luxury cars. Number 10. The Jaguar XJ6 Series One. The Jaguar XJ6 Series One arrived in 1968, but by the early 70s, it had become the definitive British luxury saloon. To many people, this was the most beautiful four-door car ever made. Low, wide, graceful. The bonnet seemed to go on forever, while the chrome trim caught the grey British sunlight in a way few modern cars ever could.
Sitting inside, one felt less like entering a vehicle and more like stepping into a gentleman's club. Soft leather seats, deep carpets, thin steering wheel, the smell of polished wood mixed with petrol and old raincoats. And then there was the ride. The XJ6 floated along British roads with almost eerie smoothness. It didn't rush, it glided. But this was still British Leyland-era Britain. Beneath the elegance lurked electrical gremlins and occasional reliability nightmares. Owners adored them, right up until the moment something stopped working without explanation. Still, people forgave the XJ6, because when it worked properly, almost nothing else felt as special. And the next car on this list carried that same sense of quiet authority, though in a very different way. Number 9. The Rover P5B. The Rover P5B was less flashy than the Jaguar, but somehow even more British. This was the car of government ministers, senior businessmen, and men who probably smoked pipes while reading the Times. Introduced in the late 60s and continuing through the 70s, the P5B looked dignified rather than aggressive. Upright grille, thick chrome bumpers, doors that closed with a heavy, reassuring clunk. Inside, it felt wonderfully old-fashioned. There was polished walnut everywhere, wide leather seats that resembled expensive armchairs, tiny details carefully assembled by people who still believed craftsmanship mattered. The Rover never tried to feel sporty. It simply cruised with quiet confidence. Oddly enough, beneath all that British formality sat a burbling American V8 engine borrowed from Buick, an unlikely partnership that somehow suited the car perfectly. Yet, despite its charm, the P5B slowly became a symbol of an aging Britain. Conservative, traditional, slightly out of step with a changing world. But while Rover represented restraint, the next car embraced pure theater. Number 8. The Bentley T-Series. Few cars announced wealth quite like the Bentley T-Series. At first glance, it looked almost identical to the Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow, and in truth, it largely was. But the Bentley badge gave it a slightly younger, more understated image. Not that anything about it was subtle. The car was enormous, long, square, and impossibly imposing on narrow British streets. From behind the wheel, the bonnet stretched out like the deck of a ship. Everything inside felt handcrafted. Real wood, thick carpets, leather stitched with astonishing care. Even the indicator stalks moved with a deliberate heaviness that modern luxury cars somehow lack. Driving one wasn't about speed. It was about isolation from the outside world. The suspension absorbed potholes and rough roads as though Britain itself had disappeared beneath you. But ownership came with consequences. Fuel economy was dreadful. Maintenance costs were terrifying.
And by the late 70s, these cars became symbols of excess during difficult economic times. Still, few cars have ever projected such effortless authority. And yet the next machine on this list offered something far more dramatic.
Number 7. The Jensen Interceptor. The Jensen Interceptor felt like Britain trying to build a luxury muscle car, and somehow it worked. Introduced earlier in the 60s, but thriving through the 70s, the Interceptor blended British craftsmanship with brutal American power. Under the bonnet sat a massive Chrysler V8, while the body carried sweeping Italian styling that looked unlike anything else on British roads. It was elegant, but dangerous looking. The rear window curved dramatically around the back of the car, giving it a futuristic feel. Meanwhile, the cabin smelled of leather, heat, and petrol in equal measure. Driving an Interceptor demanded respect. It was fast, loud, heavy, and not always entirely trustworthy. But that unpredictability became part of the experience. Owners didn't simply drive Interceptors, they survived them. Sadly, Jensen struggled financially, and the company eventually collapsed. The Interceptor became another example of British brilliance undone by economic reality. But if the Jensen had swagger, the next car possessed something quieter and far rarer. Number 6. The Daimler Sovereign. The Daimler Sovereign often lived in the shadow of Jaguar, but many owners secretly preferred it. Based heavily on the Jaguar XJ platform, the Sovereign added extra refinement and just a touch more exclusivity.
Where Jaguars felt sporty, Daimlers felt stately. The grille carried elegant fluting. The interiors featured richer trims and softer finishes. Even the atmosphere inside felt calmer somehow. You could imagine arriving at a country hotel in one on a rainy autumn evening, headlights glowing softly through the mist. Everything about the Sovereign encouraged relaxed driving. Yet, like many luxury British cars of the era, reliability remained inconsistent. Electrical faults appeared mysteriously. Rust quietly attacked body panels. Mechanics became close family friends. And still, people loved them. Because modern luxury cars often feel clinically perfect, the Daimler felt human. And the next car perhaps represented the very peak of British aristocratic motoring. Number 5. The Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow. The Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow was not designed to impress ordinary people. It existed in an entirely different world. By the 1970s, the Silver Shadow had become the preferred transport of royalty, celebrities, industrialists, and old money families who considered Jaguars slightly common. The famous grille stood tall and unapologetic. The spirit of ecstasy floated ahead like a symbol of another era entirely. Inside, silence dominated everything. The doors shut with soft heaviness. The ride quality erased rough roads almost completely.
Even the air inside seemed different somehow. Warmer, calmer, richer. But beneath the perfection, the Shadow was astonishingly complicated. Hydraulic systems, electrical components, and endless maintenance requirements made ownership expensive, even for wealthy buyers. Still, nobody bought a Rolls-Royce for practicality. They bought it for atmosphere, for occasion, for the feeling that Britain still ruled luxury motoring. And yet, the next car approached luxury from a far more modern direction. Number 4. The Triumph Stag. The Triumph Stag was supposed to become Britain's answer to the Mercedes SL, and honestly, it should have succeeded. Beautiful proportions, clean lines, elegant roll bar. It looked effortlessly sophisticated, parked outside expensive hotels or winding through the countryside. Inside, the Stag felt stylish without becoming intimidating. Wood trim, comfortable seats, and open-top motoring combined into something deeply appealing. On warm summer evenings, few British cars looked better. But the Stag's reputation became haunted by one thing: its engine.
Overheating problems and reliability disasters damaged the car almost immediately. Owners who expected glamour often found themselves stranded beside the road instead. And yet, people still adore the Stag today, because when it worked properly, it captured something uniquely British, a relaxed, slightly imperfect form of luxury that modern cars rarely achieve. And speaking of understated elegance, few cars mastered it better than the next one.
Number 3. The Rover SD1. The Rover SD1 looked like the future when it arrived in 1976. Low, sleek, and dramatically different from the upright saloons Britain was used to, the SD1 brought hatchback practicality into the luxury market. It almost resembled an Italian sports car from certain angles. The dashboard curved around the driver, the cabin felt modern and airy, and the V8 versions delivered genuine performance that surprised many German rivals. For a moment, it felt as though Britain had finally created the perfect modern executive car. Then, reality arrived. Build quality problems became infamous. Panel gaps varied wildly. Interiors rattled. Electronics misbehaved. Worker strikes disrupted production repeatedly. The SD1 represented both the ambition and tragedy of the British motor industry during the 70s. Because underneath the flaws, there was a genuinely brilliant car trying to escape. And the next machine carried that same bittersweet feeling. Number 2. The Jaguar XJ12. The Jaguar XJ12 took everything special about the XJ6 and turned it up to extraordinary levels. This was not merely luxury anymore. It was excess. Smooth V12 power transformed the car into something almost surreal. Silent acceleration, endless torque, effortless cruising. At motorway speeds, the XJ12 felt almost untouchable. Inside, little changed from the standard XJ formula because, frankly, it didn't need to. The leather, walnut, and low-slung elegance already bordered on perfection. But ownership demanded bravery. Fuel consumption was shocking. Heat management caused endless headaches. Repairs became painfully expensive. And yet enthusiasts still speak about the XJ12 with genuine affection decades later. Because no modern luxury car quite captures its strange mixture of beauty, arrogance, and fragility. Though the final car on this list perhaps symbolized 70s British luxury more completely than any other.
Number 1. The Aston Martin Lagonda. The Aston Martin Lagonda looked like it had arrived from another planet. Introduced in 1976, it shattered every expectation people had about British luxury cars. Sharp edges, folded lines, futuristic styling. It barely resembled a traditional Aston Martin at all. Inside, things became even stranger. Digital displays, touch-sensitive controls, and experimental electronics tried to drag British luxury into the future overnight. At the time, it felt astonishing, but also slightly absurd. The Lagonda became infamous for electrical problems so complicated that even Aston Martin sometimes struggled to fix them properly. Yet, despite the chaos, the car developed a cult following. Because no other luxury car of the era felt so ambitious, so fearless, so completely unwilling to blend in. The Lagonda didn't just represent 70s Britain. It represented Britain dreaming of the future, even while everything around it seemed to be falling apart.